sufficient assumption, and lots of conditionals, even if they are hidden. What are the conditional indicators here? Good. Yes, so line 3. Only social processes can develop student insights. So, develop insights, then social. Other ones? We have traditional classroom education is ineffective. That's their conclusion, right? So this is evidence, this is conclusion. Traditional, then not effective. We also have them saying as evidence, because education in such an environment, meaning traditional education, is not truly social. So traditional, then not social. So we do have the repetition of variables here. We have not social and positive social. We have traditional and traditional. So this question actually nicely fits one of the classic formulas for sufficient assumption questions. The formula is basically linking together the two pieces of evidence to form a longer conditional chain, and then on top of that, inserting or proposing a new conditional as a sufficient assumption to close the gap 100%. Now, for those who haven't seen this before, I have an article on my site walking through all the formulas in detail. I'll briefly touch on it over here just for those who aren't familiar. If we have an argument with two pieces of evidence and one conclusion, all of them being conditionals. If we said that D requires E and D requires F, actually let's just leave it as this for now. D requires E and D requires F. What new information as a sufficient assumption, if true, would close the gap 100%, leaving no ambiguity at all?
E requires D. Or sorry, E requires F.
Exactly, perfect. So E requires F. And the reason that works is because if we add it on to this as new information, E to F, as given, then we form a longer chain, D to E to F. And the argument's 100% guaranteed. So this is our evidence, and this is our sufficient assumption. So evidence plus sufficient assumption, the E is involved in both of them. Together forms the longer chain, D to E to F, which is what our goal was to justify the entire time. Now you can make it more complicated, of course. You could do D requires E, and then E requires F. Then your conclusion is, let's say, D to G, and you're like, well, where did G come from? That's going to be in your sufficient assumption. So you'll have longer chain, D to E to F, then D is common to both. You insert the new one, F arrow G, would become your sufficient assumption. So the idea is that it doesn't really matter how many parts you have. The logic is the same. You just have to link them together regardless. Now this comes in here because we have two evidence conditionals and a conclusion conditional, just like we have in the example with D, E, and F. And you see here, evidence mentions traditional, conclusion mentions traditional. This had D in the evidence. This has D in the conclusion as well. So there's a common element in both. As the sufficient condition, we're proposing a new conditional as a sufficient assumption that, when combined with the evidence, will guarantee the conclusion. That's our goal here, is to guarantee the conclusion. So first off, we want to link our two evidences together to get something like this. Now, they both mention social, but one's positive, one's negative. So how can we manipulate them to link them more easily? Exactly, contrapositive. So we could do either one. I would do the contrapositive of this, because we want to leave traditional positive at the top to later guarantee this. So what's the contrapositive of this? Yeah, perfect. So not social, then not develop insights. These link smoothly. So traditional, then not social, then not develop insights. That's our long evidence chain. Our conclusion remains the same, traditional, then not effective. So these are the same, just like these were the same. And so we add in the new conditional going from top to bottom when the sufficient conditions are the same. So F arrow G becomes our sufficient assumption. Here, this is like our F, and this is like our G. So not develop insights, then not effective. That is a new conditional that we are proposing as a sufficient assumption. That when combined with our evidence, if we were to stick it onto the end here, that would guarantee this 100% because we go trad, so not social, not develop insights, not effective, fully guaranteeing the entire chain right there, the conclusion. Let's see how this matches up with one of the answer choices. Do any choices line up with this? Yeah, excellent. Not effective unless leads to development of insight. So not effective unless insight. So they were nasty with the unless there. As we said, unless could simply be if not, and I'll do if not because I want a negative result since this is negative. So if not insight, then not effective, which is exactly what we have right here. That matches our prephrase perfectly. Took a lot of work to get there, including that nasty unless at the end just to throw us off further, but it works. And that's our answer, D. So you can do some of these formulaically. Typically when you have multiple conditionals, that's when it's most likely to apply. In other cases, it might not though. In other cases, you might just need a broader generalization of the argument itself sometimes. And that's happening more and more, but these formulaic ones do still come up every now and then.